Or maybe I need to be more fun and let my kids go in there more.
Hey y'all, it's LJ here, owner and founder of Smart Moms Plan Disney and Smart Moms Travel. We are so glad you're here for another episode of the Smart Moms Plan Disney podcast. Now, here's your host, Aly.
Welcome back to another episode of the Smart Moms Plan Disney podcast. I am here with Becky today as we explore yet another new angle to these planning, dreaming episodes we put out every week. We're going to start a series of resort deep dive episodes because it's no secret, your Disney resort is one of the greatest, most incredible parts of your Disney vacation. And over time, we're going to build a catalog that really breaks down every single individual resort. So whether you are already booked at one of these amazing resorts or you're trying to figure out which one will be best for your family, these episodes will help. Becky, how are you today?
I'm doing so good, Aly. How are you?
I'm great. And I am excited because we are starting today with one of, I would say, the most requested, most beloved Disney resorts for a lot of reasons that we are going to discuss today. Pop Century.
Pop Century. It's definitely one of those resorts that over and over and over people ask for because they want to get the benefits of being in the bubble, but often those price tags can scare them away. Also, I remember being my first time at Disney. We've talked about this before. I started by splurging and staying at All-Star Sports and being at those farther away value resorts. And then that time that we eventually took the plunge and jumped into the little bit of a splurge, which for me on a 20-something-year-old's budget was a splurge to move from All-Stars over to Pop. I felt like I was living on top of the world because I was so much closer to those parks.
Yeah, and that's just it. This, it is a step up from the All-Star Resorts, which we've talked about on the show and we will talk about more, but it's not the splurge that's going to break your bank, but it is going to give you the Disney vibes, the Disney perks, the Disney feels. It's really such a great option. And listeners know I love Disney resorts. I just love the immersive feeling. And it really doesn't get more immersive than the value tier, which, immersive in the way specifically that I'm talking, right? Where you're just going to shrink down and be thrown into this environment is kind of how it feels. And the Disney value resorts really do that. So Pop Century do you think it's kind of the crown jewel of the value resorts?
I do. I think that the comparable might be Art of Animation, but when you're talking about wanting to stay in that value price range, I still think that Pop Century is the best of the best. And realistically, when you're comparing Pop Century to the other All-Star, which is the cheapest of the value resorts, the rooms are very similar, which is part of the conversation we'll have today. But I feel like the location, the Skyliner, so many things that we'll talk deep about today are reasons that make it such a high demand resort for all of the people we're talking to in this price range.
Yeah. Is it your favorite of the value resorts?
I think, yes, it is my favorite. I think that the nostalgia of the resort is amazing. I think that walking through the lobby and getting to have flashbacks to my childhood, whether it be the Cabbage Patch from the 80s or jumping into the Disney princesses of the 90s, I think it just kind of pulls on my nostalgia. I like to think that I'm not old, but I'm knocking on the door of 40 at this moment. And so everything from my childhood is very much the oldies at this point. And my kids remind me of that on a daily basis. And so it lets them kind of have a peek into what we have. And I even get to see things from my parents' childhood, right? With the flashbacks to the 50s and the 60s. It kind of gives you the best of all of that nostalgia, Disney and non-Disney.
So I think you kind of really nailed it there. That's the biggest appeal to this resort is the nostalgia factor. I think that's what makes so many different people love Pop Century is that your grandparents are going to love it. Your parents are going to love it. The kids are going to get a kick out of, seeing life-size versions of things maybe mom, dad, aunt, grandma have talked about. And so I think hitting nostalgia in a place that calls nostalgia out like Disney World does, is one of the reasons why people love Pop Century. The other big pulls are, of course, going to be transportation. Big one for Pop Century. Big reason it's so popular. Pop Century's on the Skyliner.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the Skyliner is Disney's gondola in the sky system. So everybody knows the monorail. Everybody thinks about the monorail when they think about peak, incredible Disney transportation. It's not my favorite. Is it your favorite?
I love the Skyliner better than the monorail.
Yeah, so the monorail connects only deluxe resorts to Magic Kingdom and Epcot. The Skyliner, which is where Pop Century is situated, connects all three tiers of Disney resorts, also to two parks.
Mm-hmm.
Epcot, so you're still getting Epcot, and then Hollywood Studios. So the real only big perk to the monorail, I guess, over the Skyliner would be that it goes straight to Magic Kingdom, but I really don't see that. I mean, most people are doing all of the parks anyway. And so I really love that the Skyliner connects also two parks. It's fun. It's a ride in itself. It's way up in the sky. Your kids are going to love it. If you have a front to back double stroller, you're not typically going to have to buckle that down. Single stroller, not typically going to have to buckle that down. Sometimes because of capacities, they do ask you to, but it's good for kids. It's convenient. I really love it. And I think Pop Century having that Skyliner as an option is one of the reasons it's so popular, along with the nostalgia, like you were talking.
I think, yeah. And if you're thinking about the monorail versus the Skyliner, what I love about the Skyliner is that it's constantly loading. Where the monorail, you're waiting for the next monorail, right? You're going to get a lot of people on one monorail at a time. But to me, it feels more rewarding to be taking those steps forward every couple seconds as people are loading and then the line's moving forward comparative to the monorail. Both amazing. You're going to have a great time no matter what transportation you're using on Disney property, but the Skyliner just hits different.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And just while we're talking about location as it pertains to this resort, it has walkability to another resort. So you're saying at Pop Century, you can walk across the bridge to Disney's Art of Animation Resort, which I think anytime you can experience walkability anywhere at Disney World, a park or just another resort where you can change your scenery, get a new experience that's going to be easy for your family, I think that's always a win. And so being able to just walk across to Art of Animation and see the fun, larger than life Disney immersion over there at Art is really, really great. It's a fun afternoon activity on a down day. And I think it's another huge perk to staying at this value resort.
I think that between those two, Art of Animation and Pop Century, even if you're not staying at one of those resorts, it could be a really good way to spend a couple hours of your time off going and exploring, walking through the different decades of Pop Century or going through the Cars area of Art of Animation or the Finding Nemo, like having that walkability to explore and feel like you are legitimately living and walking through a Disney movie. It is awesome. And especially if you have littles, like my little nephew is almost 2 and he is just so immersed in that Cars area in Art of Animation. Similar, walking around and seeing the massive Mickey phone in Pop Century is just larger than life, magic in his eyes.
Well, and we actually have a Mickey phone here at our house.
No way.
It looks really similar to the one. I don't even know. It might even be the exact one that they show there. Pop Century has. If you've not been on the property yet, if you're planning on staying there, or like I said at the top of the show, if you're thinking about where you want to stay, one thing to keep in mind about Pop Century is the buildings are sectioned into decades, basically, right? And so you have the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. So you essentially have 5 decades that are covered on this sprawling, massive resort. Pop Century is very, very big. And that's something that we're going to talk about and keep in mind. But each of the decades has 2 to 3 buildings, I believe, that are just decked out with toys, memorabilia, slogans, like things you would say in those periods, fashion, things like that really are what defined those decades. They're blown up, huge, larger than life, paying homage to it right there in the resort. So the Mickey phone being one of those things. There are big wheel cars, Play-Doh, foosball. I mean, is that the staple of the staples?
Oh, seriously. I really, really loved when we stayed in the 90s section. Right outside of our room was this massive floppy disk. And my kids were kind of like, what is that? Like they just didn't know. And there's an area by the pool because in the 90s area, there's a big pool that is like a laptop computer kind of vibe. And it just feels like the 90s in that area. And it just makes my heart so happy. Did you have a big wheel?
Yes.
I totally
Yeah,
did
of
too.
course.
And I remember taking my seat off so that I could put my foot on and push it, kind of like what our kids use as scooters now, but it was a big wheel. It just brings back.
We had to get creative. We had to get creative back then.
Yes, we really did. We really did. But that was exactly like, it just brings back those happy feelings of our childhood and letting us tell stories to our kids about things that we might not have thought about for years now.
Well, and everybody loves that, right? You love to have a recall that you didn't expect back to something you haven't thought about since you were little. And there's nothing better than sharing that with your littles. My son, who is only 5 years old, has this big interest right now in Rubik's Cubes.
Mm-hmm.
He's just really into them. He thinks they're very cool. He is absolutely adamant that he can solve one. And he's pretty smart. Like, I mean, he's only 5, so he's not going to solve it today, but he'll definitely figure it out at some point. But there's a Rubik's Cube, and we're planning on heading to Disney. He hasn't actually seen that since his Rubik's Cube fascination began. But that's one of those things where I'm really excited to show him, and it's just going to be a fun little nugget on our trip. So the theming there, speaking to so many different generations, different parts of generations, that your kids can have fun with. You may be thinking, well, my kids don't know what a floppy disk is. This isn't going to be very fun. They're going to be confused. Not at all. They get it. They get that these are things from another time. And not only do they get it, they enjoy it. It's fun to learn about things you didn't know and to even try to process what, a floppy disk could have been is really a good time.
That was the conversation we had with the kids. It wasn't necessarily, they knew it had to do with a computer. Like when I had my girls there, they knew it had to do with a computer, but I'm like, what would it do for the computer? And they're like, would it like load a game? And I'm like, sometimes,
Yeah.
like having them try to guess what these different things even did. And walking by, another time we stayed in the 80s area and kind of over in that area, there's a Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head that you can take a picture with right next to you that are like full size, not like little. They're like bigger than life. Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. It's just everything nostalgic in this resort.
Yeah. I think we can't use the word nostalgia enough, right? It's just, that's to me what the big pull at this resort is. That's why it is so popular, along with, I believe, the Skyliner. Those two things put together, and affordability. So being in the value tier of Disney properties makes this resort only a little bit more expensive than Disney's all-star resorts, which are generally the least expensive on property. And honestly, for the vibes, the convenience, I think it's well worth the little bit more that you're going to pay to stay there than you would at All Star. In addition to the Skyliner, Pop Century has the bus system. We talk about the bus system. Buses at Disney you're going to ride a bus when you're at Disney. It's very hard to avoid it because even when you're staying on the Skyliner, you still have to get to the other parks, Disney Springs, places like that. You may have a dining reservation elsewhere. You need to take a bus. And they have what Disney calls a dedicated bus system, which means that this resort doesn't share busing with anyone. And it's a very big resort, as I mentioned. And so the buses are pretty continuous. They keep them coming. I have found that it's one of the more convenient bus systems, I guess. You're waiting a little bit less, I feel like, on average at this resort than elsewhere. And so on days where you're not utilizing that Skyliner, you're using a bus that you're going to use no matter where you stay, but you're using it in a way that I just feel is a little bit more convenient than maybe some of the other resorts that we may talk about on the show.
I think that lends to it being such a big resort. When it's a big resort, they recognize there's a lot of people to move within these big resorts. And so for that purpose, I think it's probably one of the reasons they thought to extend the Skyliner down to both Art of Animation and Pop Century kind of hub is these big resorts like Pop Century just need to move a lot of people. They're smaller rooms than comparison to like a moderate or a deluxe resort. And so they can fit a lot of people into these buildings. It's going to be busy. It's going to have a lot of kids. It's going to have all of those reasons. But having that dedicated bus line, if you're at the All-Star resorts, sometimes they'll share a bus between the 3 resorts. And that really can be a difference maker versus not having to stop at multiple stops. You're going straight to your resort, hopping off, and then walking straight to your room.
Yeah, there are so many buildings. Think about roughly 3 buildings per decade, 5 decades. I mean, there are a lot of buildings. And as you said, the rooms on average here are smaller. So I think that's a good transition for us to talk a little bit about what it's going to look like if you're staying in one of the Pop Century rooms, because they are going to be smaller, which means there are going to be more of them across all of these buildings. But do you feel like they are too small? Do they serve their purpose? What is your general feeling when you know you're going to stay at Pop Century?
To me, I think they're just right. I think Disney is using their space so well at this point. They recognize that the Murphy bed is so much better served to give your family the ability to have a table and 2 actual mattresses and not have to deal with the pull-out mattress situation. These are only going to sleep 4 max in your room, unless you happen to have a baby under 3, you can have a crib in that situation. But I feel like it's enough space for 4 people if your goal is the parks and you're not going to be spending a bunch of time in your room. It serves the purpose.
Yeah, they do sleep 4, which, you know, you have 3 kids, I have 3 kids. A single Pop Century room does not accommodate either of our families. You can, if you are a family of 5 or more and Pop Century is really what you want, you can talk to your Smart Moms travel agent. We do know how to maybe help you guarantee 2 rooms that would be maybe connecting so you could accommodate your family. So there are always ways to make things work with Disney. But if you're looking at 1 room, 1 package, and your family is larger than 4, that wouldn't be able to be done. So you have 1 bed, typically in the layout of a Pop Century room. You're going to have 1 queen bed and 1 queen Murphy bed. Now, a Murphy bed, which you briefly mentioned, Becky, is a bed that is up in the wall. And it actually at Pop Century has a table coming out. And then you just kind of reach the handles that are up, above the table, and you pull it down. My daughter can do it on her own. This is not difficult. They're very light. People are intimidated by it unnecessarily. Very easy. Pull it down. You have 2 queen beds. So if you only have 2 people staying in a room, you have a chance to get a king bed. But any party size over 2, you're going to have the queen and the Murphy queen. And I think the Murphy bed is great. I really like that Disney is integrating these into more of their rooms. It's not just at the value resorts. We're seeing them at the deluxe resorts and the villas as well. And so it is something that Disney is looking at utilizing more of. And the number one reason I think is for space.
And amen to getting rid of pull-out sofa mattresses. Nobody wants to sleep on those pull-out sofa mattresses. This is such a better alternative. Still give the space, still give the availability of an extra thing in your room, like a table, or for instance, in some of the villas, the Murphy bed comes down over a couch, but you're not pulling those sofa cushions, figuring out where to store them, sleeping on a cardboard piece of a pull-out sofa. Like, it's a legit mattress. And when you pull that Murphy bed down, it's always such a fun surprise for kids to see what Disney characters are hiding behind that Murphy bed.
Yes, that's so true. They do. Disney does a great job. It's not just typically a blank wall back there when you pull it down. There's some sort of fun Disney surprise, which is great. And then the best part of all, when you wake up in the morning, you very, very quickly and easily put that bed back up in the wall. And now you have a bunch of floor space areas for you to pull those suitcases out and get ready for the day. Because if you have 2 kids, you know you need a lot of space to just let their stuff kind of spread out when you're trying to get ready. I mean, how many of our kids are super tidy? Mine certainly are not. And so we need that extra space to spread out. And when you have 2 beds in a room, it makes it a lot more difficult to do that.
You actually said something that made me remember something else I loved about these particular room setups is Disney, when they did these refurbs, they recognized the need that families have for space. And so they've lifted that platform bed up, and a folded stroller can typically fit underneath it. Your suitcases can fit underneath it. So they are being very, very intentional and very, very smart in helping moms feel like they have what they need, even in a very small situated room.
Yeah, I think here are two ways you can think about this Pop Century. Outside of the resort, overall fun, just fun, larger than life, nostalgia. Everybody is going to have a good time out there when you're walking around the resort. It's impossible not to have a good time. Inside the rooms, convenience, thoughtfulness. You know, they did just redo the rooms at Pop Century, and they have this sort of laminate wood vibe going on throughout. Not my favorite, honestly. You know, these are not the most beautiful rooms. They're not the most decorated rooms. They have subtle Disney touches here and there, you know, photos on the wall, things like that. But overall, it is like a laminate wood type vibe. But that's okay because it's clean.
It's
easy
clean.
to keep clean.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's very clean. It's very easy to keep clean. And it's convenient. Being able to put things under the bed, being able to put the bed back in the wall. It's really nice. And those are the things where, you know, if you're just thinking, where can I stay that's going to suit my budget, which isn't, you know, I don't want to break my bank at all by any means, but I want convenience and I want fun. This resort offers that. You know, the fun might not carry into the room on theming, but your family can bring the fun. Hello.
And there's a massive TV. I don't know how big it is. It has to be like a 45 or 50-inch TV in that room. It is a big TV that typically, if you pre-register, like you get on your app, your My Disney Experience app, and pre-register for your room, it might have your family's name on the TV when you walk in. You're going to turn on Disney Channel, and it's just going to feel like you're at Disney. And how smart are they with the design of their bathroom? That there's a pocket door that closes from the shower and tub area to the sink area, and also a barn door that closes in front of the sink area with the extra little storage space for the little closet area. So there are really two private places that people can be getting ready in this small space.
Yeah, even some of the deluxe resorts that we've stayed at, you only have one big bathroom space. This resort, again, thoughtfulness. That's what I think about. Inside the room, you need it to function for your family. And the separation of the shower and toilet area from the sink and vanity area is so important. And not every resort has that at Disney World. You need it. You know, somebody needs to be brushing their teeth while somebody else is using the restroom. That happens. And it's so nice that here it can. And I really think that the rooms are small, but they function well. And that is a hard balance to really nail. Also, these rooms have all the like basic, if you're a family, you're coming into Pop, you're wondering what you're going to have all the basic amenities. Coffee maker, absolutely, mini fridge. And then just things you would find in other hotel rooms, hair dryers, things like that. You're going to have it all, which is great.
But do not pack yourself shampoo and conditioner. Like they have not just like trial size that you're going to run out, or you go to the pool and you run out and you're like, I just need conditioner to help my little girl's hair not be a rat's nest kind of idea, right? I've been there as a mom, but they have high quality Disney product, body wash, shampoo, conditioner right in the tub for you to use. You're not going to run out.
No. And if you do, they're going to refill it for you. You have no reason to worry at all. It's the same product you're going to find at any resort on Disney property. It doesn't matter if you're staying at from All Stars all the way on up through the Disney Resort Collection. That is what you're getting. And so I also really, really love it. Mm-hmm. I love that we're diving into these rooms because I think when you're a family going to Disney World, that's a stressor. You want to know what to expect. What is this room going to look like? How should I pack? How is it going to function for me? And I want families, especially young families, kids. That's what you see a lot at this resort. So it can be noisy. That's important to point out. Because it's so large, sprawling, and busy, it can be noisy. But I feel like most families that are there are probably noisy themselves. And so we all kind of understand each other. And I really, really like that. But there are 4 different, I wouldn't necessarily call them room types, but room categories, I guess we can say, because all the rooms themselves are going to look the same at Pop Century. They're all going to be the same interior layout. with the separate bathrooms and the beds that we've discussed. In most cases, the queen and the Queen Murphy, but for parties of 2 or less, you could have the king. But there are different location types, rooms that you can book, and those are going to cost a different amount. So Pop Century has 4, where, people have heard me at length on this show talk about how view is important to me. And when you get into the deluxe category at Disney resorts, you're paying extra for the view. For what is my balcony looking at? Am I looking at the castle or the parking lot? Am I looking at savanna animals or a rooftop? At Pop Century, you're not paying extra for the view. You don't have a balcony. These rooms are sort of Disney motel style, right? They are exterior entry rooms. So you're walking on an outside walkway, and then that's where your door is going to be. So you don't have a balcony to step out on. You have a window, but not a balcony. So that's not what you're paying extra for here. Of course, when you open your curtains, you're looking out typically over the walkway you just walked from. It's not like on the other side of the room or anything. So the 4 types of rooms you can book here are going to be standard pool view, preferred, and preferred pool view. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the pros and cons of each of these are and where you're going to find each of these rooms. Do you have a resort category at Pop Century, Becki, that you are drawn to the most?
There's not even a question about what I want. I want preferred pool view room because...
You do? Interesting.
Yes. Because of the location it's going to put me in, it's going to centralize me, and it's going to put me near the pool that I want to be swimming in. Compared to a pool view does not guarantee you're by the hippy dippy pool that I want to be by. You could be pool view, and that doesn't mean you have pool view off of like a balcony, right? Like you're saying, it's when you open your curtain or your door, you can see the pool from your room, right? That's you're not really going out on a balcony and over watching the pool. You can see one of the many pools on property for this one, but preferred pool view is going to put me close to the Skyliner, close to the lobby. All of the transportation, food options are in that preferred kind of area. And then I want pool view because I want to be able to get to the pool with as little amount of walking in my swimsuit as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. This is really funny to me because, first of all, standard is obviously going to be the least expensive of these resort categories to book. You're probably going to be in a farther out building location or decades location, as Pop Century has it categorized. And you may not be anywhere near the main pool, which we'll talk a little bit about the different pools that are on property here in a bit. So that's something to keep in mind. If price is number one, you're still going to get all of the amenities. You're still going to get all of the perks. You're still going to be at Pop Century. So if price is number one, then standard room is going to be the one you're going to want. It's typically not that much more to upgrade this room. So I really encourage you to talk with your Smart Moms agent and kind of weigh the pros and cons, because for me, location is everything. When view isn't everything, it's going to be location. When you're on a Disney vacation, you're walking a ton. And a standard room could be an extra 5 or more minutes of walking to get where you need to go. And that can be a lot. If you have little ones and you don't have a stroller, or you've been pushing the stroller all day, at the end of the day, that gets to be a lot.
I think that 5 minutes doesn't matter when you have the excitement of the morning. That 5 minutes matters when you have the exhaustion of the evening.
Exactly. And the standard rooms are sort of located all throughout this property. You can find standard rooms in any building, but the farthest away, I get a kick out of this. I think it's so funny. And I want to know if you've ever thought of it this way, because I'm an 80s baby and a 90s kid. Yeah. I was born in the 80s, really grew up in the 90s. That's me. And those are the most recent decades at Pop Century, are the 80s and 90s, with the oldest being 50s. The most standard buildings are like the 80s and 90s. The ones I prefer being, but I don't like the walk. I think it's kind of funny. I think it's intentional. Like the people that are wanting the 80s, 90s are the younger people. So they put us way on the farther walk. But then if my grandma's going, she wants the 50s building. So like, well, grandma needs a shorter walk. So 50s needs to be preferred.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that Disney knows what they're doing in the design of what they're categorizing these things. And, when we've actually had a standard view over in the 80s, borderline 90s area, and I'm also born in the 80s, feel like 90s is my childhood. So I love being in that area. But when we were staying there with my kids, there's some benefits from being farther away as well. I feel like you're not getting the noise that comes from the main pools. And I was talking to each of my kids before we were recording this, and all three of them had similar vibes about the 80s and 90s. And I think it might just be my excitement about staying in the 80s and 90s coming through to them that they remember that excitement. But when we were staying out on those quieter areas of the resort, we've seen wild bunnies like out hopping around property. We've taken walks along the water and seeing art animation across the water. Like, you can have a really good time even if you're pushed out into some of those buildings. But you're right. Disney knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think there's something really to be said for that. If you're going standard, you are going to get a quieter experience in a very loud resort, you know? And so I like that for that. The standard pool is, as you just said, maybe not the main pool. You could be looking, there are actually 3 pools. So you have the Hippy Dippy pool, the bowling pin pool, and the computer pool. And we'll talk again a little bit more about those when we get out of the room types, but the Hippy Dippy is the main pool. Standard pool could mean that you are in the 50s building looking at, or it could be in 80s, 90s looking at a pool. So, you know, you have a really wide range of where you may end up with a standard pool. You could be really far out. You could be closer. And you don't know which pool you're going to be looking at. And of course, your Smart Moms agent can request a building for you. Requests are never guaranteed, but it's good to know when I'm booking this room type, where may I end up? And am I happy with those options?
And another hint at that My Disney experience, pre-registering for check-in. Sometimes you're able to completely skip the check-in desk altogether, but while you're doing that online check-in on the My Disney Experience app, you can request a decade. It's not guaranteed, again, but that's another place for you to put in that preference.
Yeah. So those are going to be your standard and standard pool. And then the preferred, which is my go-to. Sometimes I'm hesitant for the preferred pool just because of the noise. You know, kids will start swimming early. Maybe it's our down day and I want to sleep a little bit. You know, I'm not necessarily always into wanting to look at the pool because of the noise. And because I feel like you're a little closer than you are. Like when I stay at, let's say, Animal Kingdom, we have had a pool view before, and I felt like I was a little farther away from the pool than than at the Pop Century pool view. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so preferred room, not pool view. Those are going to be the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Those are your preferred buildings. Those are the circling, like the main area. And basically what that means is you're going to be closer to the main lobby. You're going to be closer to the dining hall, the main transportation bus stop, and where Uber picks you up and drops you off, minivans, lift services, mirrors, things like that, and the shopping on the resort. So it's a great location, great place to be. There are some 50s buildings that are a little further-ish out, as well as 70s, but they all have buildings that are right there, going to be convenient. Take notes. If you're staying at Pop Century or thinking about it and you're staying preferred, buildings 1 through 3 in the 50s section, buildings 4 and 5 in the 60s are really great because those are going to be also close to the Art of Animation Bridge, which is convenient for some fun, like we talked about, especially on the down day. And then the 70s, buildings 6 and 10 are going to be good options for you. So just kind of knowing where on the resort you want to be, what's important to you, and then, trying to make that happen.
Yeah. This is what we call this a deep dive, right? This isn't just surface level information.
No, yeah, it's important that you really dissect it because okay, I've booked Pop Century. I'm saving some money. I'm having some fun. Now, what else do I need to know? Because there's so much. So then your final room category is going to be that preferred pool view. And that's going to be in the 60s building. And that is going to be overlooking the Hippy Dippy pool, the main pool there on property, and absolutely the buildings that are closest to those amenities. So these are going to be the most preferred rooms on property. That's where you're going to end up is in the 60s overlooking Hippy Dippy. And so I like that. Again, it's fine. The resort's pretty noisy anyway. And so to avoid the pool view for the reasons I said, you may still have a noise issue, no matter what, although I've never really had too bad of one. That's just my only hesitation with that preferred pool. But yeah, for location and convenience, it's worth spending. And you might, from standard to preferred pool view, the stretch isn't that big of a range.
Yeah, absolutely. And it puts you closer to some of the other things that we haven't talked about, which is like they have a bumper pool and a ping pong table and the the bar, right? There's other things that it puts you closer to that it might be worth the, gosh, we're talking sometimes only like a $10 or $15 splurge to make that jump from a lower category.
Right. It's absolutely worth exploring because location does matter on these at these value properties, and especially at Pop Century. If you're not booking specifically a pool view, you're going to be seeing a courtyard or a parking area.
Lot.
Yeah, parking lot or courtyard. Maybe you'll get lucky in a courtyard. Would be awesome to see, but no guarantee. Like I said, when you're booking a standard view or even just a preferred room without specifying pool view, the upgrades at Pop, very important to know. They have to do with location, not view. Inside the rooms, one last thing before we move on from just the rooms themselves, outlets and USB ports. I think that's important to say.
It really, really is. In fact, when I was recording my walkthrough of the Pop Century room, I was blown away how many USB ports. There are some deluxe resorts that this is clearly not necessarily an oversight. They just haven't been refreshed since the demand for a USB port has been. But these renovated rooms that are all of the Pop Century rooms have a lot of USB ports, outlets, those things that tie back to that convenience and that thoughtfulness of what a mom needs when she's at Disney with her kids.
Exactly. We are going to talk even more about that and more as we dive deeper into what there is to love about this amazing resort, Pop Century, after we take a quick break. Hey there, Mom. I see you. You're dreaming of taking your kiddos to the most magical trip of a lifetime. But how do you do it? Isn't Disney expensive? Or maybe you think planning is just too complicated. You need the Smart Moms Plan Disney podcast. Tune in every week as we dish the do's and don'ts to ensure your vacation is every bit as memorable as your family deserves. Consider this your invitation to pull up a chair and join the most magical conversation on earth with the Smart Moms Plan Disney podcast. We'll see you real soon. So you've talked a little bit about my Disney experience, pre-checking in. Pop Century obviously has that ahead of arrival check-in, which I think is great. You're going to be able to use your Magic Band to unlock your door, to make on-site purchases. Also so convenient and wonderful. I think that's important to note. Magic Band is going to work as your sort of keys to the world there at Pop Century, just like it would at any Disney resort. So that's great. Now you know the room types. You know, what building are you staying in? What do I need to think about when I'm thinking about which room I'm booking? What else can you expect at Pop Century? So we briefly talked about the Skyliner as a form of convenient transportation. I also just want to touch on the Skyliner as a form of entertainment because just riding the Skyliner is fun in itself. So even if you're not going to Hollywood Studios or Epcot, just riding the Skyliner and seeing the resorts and parks from above is a really fun thing to do. And if you've never been to Disney, it's like a must do. And if you're somebody that returns to Disney all the time, like you or I, there's nothing that gets more exciting to me than just seeing Disney landmarks. Like I still get excited when I see the top of Summit Plummet at Blizzard Beach. Like it's still fun for me, Disney landmarks and seeing them from Disney or different viewpoints. So sort of looking at the Skyliner as not only an awesome form of transportation, but also entertainment, because think about where it drops you off at the Epcot gate.
Yeah. And there's so much to do in that boardwalk area. We constantly, I feel like it's the theme of our podcast is we talk about go to the boardwalk area. It is so much fun.
We are boardwalk believers on this podcast. Like it is an entertainment district. It's a place you have to go. And when you're staying at Pop Century, your arrival night, you're not going to a park, but you're going to ride the Skyliner. It's going to be easy. You know, you're probably exhausted from your travel. And you're going to land at the boardwalk and you're going to see all that free entertainment we've discussed on the show. You might have dinner at Trattoria Al Forno, or maybe you're going to go to a walk-up window and get pizza. Maybe you're going to go over to Beaches and Cream and get a Mickey Sink ice cream and split it with the family. And maybe you're going to see the fireworks from the boardwalk. You know, like there's so much going on over there. And it's a perk. It's a real perk of staying at Pop Century is being able to get to the boardwalk so easily.
You are legitimately making my mouth water. Like you're talking about trattoria, and I'm just envisioning this amazing lasagna and chicken parm, getting nice drinks, and then going out and having the twinkly lights out over the water. There is so much to do, and the Skyliner makes that possible. Get yourself to that boardwalk area on the Skyliner.
That is your moment where you get to stand with whomever you're there with. Maybe you planned with your significant other or a friend, or maybe it's just you and your kids, and you get to stand on that boardwalk. You know, maybe you grabbed a drink from Abracadabra, or maybe you grabbed an ice cream from the boardwalk ice cream parlor, and you're just standing looking out on that water. And that's the I've made it moment. And even though where I'm describing, you're not at the resort you're staying at, the resort you're staying at, Pop Century, made that moment even more possible than it would have been otherwise because you're connected by the Skyliner. And I feel like it is important to point out right now, if you're going to be staying at Pop Century in January, get with your Smart Moms travel agent, ask about Skyliner closures. Right now, as we record this, upcoming January 2024, there's going to be some closures. January 23, there were some, and it just sort of feels like this is going to be a trend. So just make sure you're always looking out for Skyliner closures because you don't necessarily want to arrive and have counted on it and then it be not operating while you're there because the resort is still open during those closures. So be mindful of that. And then the pools. We've mentioned them. Talk about the pools a little bit.
So there are 3 of them. All 3 of them are great, but they're definitely different vibes, right? So we have the 90s pool that is that computer themed pool that I've kind of been hinting at. It's very calm most of the day. In fact, both of the pools that aren't the hippy dippy pool tend to be the calmer pools. They're the pools that people will go to get their refreshing, but they're not necessarily drawn there as an entire family because the bar is not at those pools. The hippy dippy pool is the pool that has the bar. It's right by the lobby. It has these little flowers that are shooting water spouts into the big pool. All of them will have lifeguards manning these pools, which is such a relief. And there'll be life jackets for your babies to have, let you be a little more carefree. And what I love about the Hippy Dippy pool in particular is that sometimes during the day, they'll be having pool games and the lifeguards actually will pull the kids all to one area in the pool and they'll be playing Name That Tune and they'll be playing different kinds of games with your kids. So it really is a great break from the hot days and long days or a rest day while you're making good time of your resort day.
Yeah, I love that there are options here, right? Like in the 50s section is where that bowling pool is. In the 90s section is where that computer pool is. They're quieter. So you just need to be refreshed. You want to cool down and relax, go there. But that 60s hippy dippy pool is the party pool. That is the fun one. That is where the Disney activity is happening. That is where the kiddie pool and the pool bar are. No water slide. Important to note, at a value resort like Pop Century, you're not going to have a water slide. You're not going to have a hot tub. So both of those things really important to note because they are something that I personally do count on. And so we have to really be prepared when we're going to be staying somewhere that they don't have those things because you don't want to be disappointed when you get there and you don't have it. So know before you go, no slide, no hot tub, but still great fun.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention at the Hippy Dippy pool, there is a fenced in kiddie area that's perfect for 1 to 3 year olds to just kind of toddle around and not having any depth to the water. It still has that gate around it and it still has the fun music and theming and all of that, but it pulls itself kind of away from the big Hippy Dippy pool where the bigger kids are going to be playing.
Right. And the Hippy Dippy pool is also where you're going to find those movies under the stars. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the Disney resorts will play a different Disney movie each night. You can typically see that schedule upon arrival, not usually before. But there'll be a sign somewhere that's easy for you to find. You shouldn't have to search for it, where you can ask a cast member, what night are you having movies? Maybe they're having s'mores. What movie will be playing? And you'll be able to see all that information. I don't want to stress anybody out. It's very easy for you to find. They want you to know about it. And when Pop Century is hosting Movies Under the Stars, they do typically host them at the Hippy Dippy pool, which is also just a really fun activity.
Yeah.
The Classic Hall, another place that if you're staying at Pop Century, you want to be familiar with. That is your main lobby. That is guest services. That is your food court, gift shop, and what Pop Century calls the fast forward arcade. Are you an arcade person at Disney World?
I'm not really, but we went with our kids, and Sean's brother, who was a bachelor, came and spoiled our kids rotten, bought them an arcade gift card, essentially, right? They put the tokens onto a card and they just lived it up in that arcade. And the kids had so much fun. And if I was to be an arcade person, I feel like the retroness of Pop Century is the perfect place to go and have that arcade moment.
Yeah, we like don't usually go to the arcades, but I feel like an arcade at Pop Century in all that nostalgia. And I guess we could just go ahead and say for any Smart Moms travel agents listening, your hidden Mickey is nostalgia. It's perfect for this episode, this resort. And a little funny thing that I've never really thought about, but when I've talked a lot on the show about going to Disney World with my parents and my brother and my grandparents growing up every year, arcades were something that we did on those trips. My mom and my grandma took my brother and I to the arcade every trip. And my grandpa and my dad didn't typically go. They may find something else to do. But I do have a funny memory. I was riding this motorcycle, like playing this motorcycle game. It was way too big for me. And my dad did come in and he was just dying laughing. And I was really young and I still remember it. So it must be a core memory in there somewhere about this, because then every year we went back, I would go straight to that game. And I loved it so much. So those arcades did bring me a lot of joy when I was younger. Maybe I need to be more fun and let my kids go in there more, because we're not arcade people now.
I think but it speaks to, you said you were a 90s kid, and that's exactly what it is, right? You're a kid of the 90s, and arcades was something that embodied the 90s. I think if you watch things like, I don't know, Stranger Things or whatever, it just feels like that 90s vibe. And
Yeah.
so it's like that total flashback. Absolutely.
My mom did take my kids to the arcade. We were there, and I'm a big NFL football fan. And my team that I support I was having a big game, and my dad and I were watching it. And yes, we were at Disney, and yes, we were watching it. It was actually the best afternoon ever. And my mom happens to root for a different team, and so she didn't really have interest in it. And she took the kids down to the arcade, and they did that for forever while we watched the game. It was really fun. So my kids have been. It's just not when I've taken them.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's really a fun thing to know that it's there. Like most gift shops at Disney resorts, the one here will have some basic food items, things you may need, probably going to be pretty expensive. So you may want to consider a grocery delivery, which you can do at this resort. You can have groceries delivered or you can pick things up. And the food court itself is going to have really kid-friendly options. Pizza, chicken fingers, sandwiches, salads, things that you want to eat, things that they want to eat. And on the dining plan, which is coming back, and we spoke about recently on our character dining episode, so make sure to check that out if you haven't. The quick service at Pop Century will be worth 1 quick service credit. So if you have the quick service dining plan, or if you have the Disney dining plan, you can eat via mobile order in your phone, or just going there and getting your food with 1 quick service credit. So that's really great as well.
Another thing you can add there is you can use your snack credits there as well. Like if you are coming back for a midday break, you can swing by the lobby and head into the food court, grab a quick snack and fill your belly a little bit. I was thinking about when we were talking about all of these pieces, like the food court's right there, the hippy dippy pool's right there, the movies under the stars are right there. Like, could you imagine just going and grabbing a pizza for your family, grabbing some towels from the hippy dippy pool, planting your family right in front of the big blow up screen? I don't know, like Finding Nemo or something's going to be playing, and just envisioning sitting yourself there, eating pizza and making core memories.
Yeah, to me, Pop Century, fun, convenient, relaxing, even in all the noise. Mm-hmm. You know, this is a chill, I'm eating pizza and hanging out. You know, that
it is.
And there is that vibe goes a long way. And I know for a fact that's the vibe that makes my kids the most happy. You know, they love nothing more than just to swim and relax and, you know, eat their 3 main food groups, which are pizza, mac and cheese, and chicken fingers, like every other kid.
They're Disney kids.
Yeah.
They're Disney kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I always love, right when I book my family at a new resort, my wife is immediately like, tell me everything I need to know. I want to know what the room looks like. I want to know what there is to do. And that's why I'm excited about these episodes, because I hope anybody that is planning on staying at Pop Century, or maybe you've stayed there before and you just want to relive those memories, or you're trying to figure it out, these episodes are really going to suit so many different layers of where you are in your Disney planning, and maybe recall some of that nostalgia of already staying there, things like that. So I'm so excited to do these and talk about all the resorts at length. And I'm happy to have started with Pop Century because it is so popular for so many good reasons.
It really is. It makes me want to go stay there right now. I need to plan like a trip with my girls or something.
I know. Last thing, which building would you request? Like everything out, or maybe just keep that in mind. Standard, preferred, everything w've talked about. Where are you requesting?
I think I want to be in that 60s building because I'm positioning myself. The 60s buildings, I'm fine with any of them. Right there by the hippy dippy pool, right there by the bar, right there where the laundry facilities are, where you could do laundry, right where it's very close to the section where you can go and see the massive Mickey phone. You can see the full size foosball players. Like there's nothing to dislike about that area. It's just, I love it.
Yeah, this is so hard for me personally because I'm just like, I'm so obvious, right? Deluxe resorts, I want a view. Value resorts, I want a location. So I should want to say I would request 60s because it's the best location. But my nostalgic heart really just wants to stay in the 90s. Like I just want to go back to the
floppy
90s.
disk.
Yeah.
You want that big, massive, like brick cell phone to be walking
Zach
by.
Morris's phone. Yeah.
You want to walk by the massive Walkman and the Rubik's Cube and the yo-yo, like all of the different things.
Yeah, Pop Century is like one of the only resorts where I would surrender location and or view, I think, just to take a visit back to the 90s.
Let's date you, Aly. Did you have a Walkman when you were young?
I had a Walkman.
Was it a CD Walkman or a cassette Walkman?
I had both. I had a yellow cassette Walkman and then my Discman. For any listeners that know, I had a Discman, in the car ride to Disney, you had to hold it just so perfectly because if you go over a bump, your CD skips. Yeah.
Yeah, that cassette one that you're talking about, the yellow cassette Walkman, there is a larger than life 2-story, maybe 3-story high Walkman. And it's just like, how do you walk by that and not just be like, those were great days?
Oh yeah, I had it, and a Discman, my silver Discman. I got it for Christmas. That's so funny. See what this resort does? It immediately makes us want to tell stories about our childhood. It'll do the same for your family members that were born in the 50s all the way through the 90s. And it's just fun. It unlocks a lot. And because it unlocks a lot, it adds a lot to your vacation, which is great. I'm so glad we had this conversation. This was really fun.
I completely agree.
Yeah, we love sharing with all of our listeners just all the layers to a Disney vacation, and especially diving deep into these resort stays. Recently, we had a listener leave us a really kind 5-star review. I want to share. Upstate Niche said, I was so overwhelmed by planning a Disney trip, and listening to this podcast recommended by my Smart Moms travel agent has made it easy and fun to learn more about everything Disney and start putting a plan together. I love that so much. Number one, Upstate Niche is so smart because she's using a free Smart Moms travel agent, which is great. And then another added layer of help, just listening and enjoying this podcast. So hopefully she's taking all of her travel agent's advice and then having fun sprinkling some of ours in as well. So Upstate Niche, thank you. And to her Smart Moms travel agent, thank you. We are so grateful to have all of that support. What did you think of today's episode? Did you enjoy it? If so, it means so much to us if you would just hit like and subscribe wherever you're listening right now. Stop where you're listening, wherever you're tuning in every single week. Just like, subscribe so our episodes hit you every time they drop. You don't have to go searching for it. It's going to find you. And you doing that, taking that small step really, really helps us more than you can possibly understand. So we are grateful for those of you that are liking, subscribing, showing up every week. It makes our time here so much more fun, and we are really grateful. If you're planning a Disney trip soon, the perfect gift for the Disney planner in your life might just be a Patreon subscription. Did you know we just started a Patreon? Becky, we have a Patreon.
We have a Patreon, and it's so awesome to be feeling the support from our listeners, but also getting to give back to them with the guides and the extra insights and all of the things that come from being a Patreon subscriber.
For as low as $2 to $7 a month, you can get exclusive monthly planning guides and so much more. We are consistently adding to the value of joining our Patreon. So grateful to the original members And it's not too late to claim bragging rights and be an original Smarty in that Patreon. We're pushing the deadline to the end of December this year. And if you've been a loyal listener since the beginning, just please make sure to become a Patreon subscriber by the end of the year. Don't miss out. So you can say you are an original. There is a little pixie dust coming to everyone who becomes a Patreon supporter at either $2 or $7 by the end of the year. And who doesn't want a little extra pixie dust? Am I right?
So right. Love it.
We will see you there. Either way, we are grateful you're here listening every single week. If you like this episode, be sure to check out The Right Way to Do Hollywood Studios and The Right Way to Do Epcot. 2 parks well connected to Pop Century as we laid out. You're going to want to know about those parks just as much as you wanted to know about this resort because you don't want to skip them, especially if you have an upcoming stay at Pop Century. And of course, if you like the idea of Pop Century, but you want a little bit more, maybe you want that pool slide or hot tub or just a little bit of a level up in your vacation without breaking the bank, be sure to check out the best and worst of Disney World's moderate resorts right here in our podcast feed. And until next time, we'll see you real soon.